Jungkook felt Jimin's breath hitch as he kissed along his neck, the smaller man's hands gripping his shoulders tightly. He smiled against Jimin's skin, loving the way the other man responded to his touch. Jungkook's own desire was building rapidly, his hips pressing forward instinctively to seek friction. Jungkook, Jimin gasped, arching into him. Please. The plea was all it took to snap the last of Jungkook's control. With a growl, he captured Jimin's lips in a searing kiss, his tongue delving deep to taste the smaller man fully. Jungkook's hands slid down to Jimin's hips, gripping them tightly as he ground his erection against the other man. Jimin moaned into the kiss, his own hips moving to meet Jungkook's thrusts. The friction was delicious, but it wasn't enough. Jungkook broke the kiss, panting heavily. Need you? He growled, his voice rough with desire. Need to be inside you. Jungkook laid Jimin gently on the bed, his eyes dark with lust as he gazed down at the smaller man. He quickly shed his own clothes, revealing his toned physique and impressive arousal. Jimin's breath caught in his throat at the sight of Jungkook's body, his own desire spiking once more. He reached for the taller man, pulling him down into a heated kiss as Jungkook settled between his thighs. Their kisses were messy and desperate, tongues tangling as they explored each other's mouths. Jungkook's hands roamed over Jimin's body, squeezing and caressing every inch of skin he could reach. He broke the kiss to trail his lips down Jimin's neck, biting and sucking at the sensitive flesh. Jungkook, Jimin moaned, arching into the taller man's touch. I need you inside me, Jungkook growled in response. Reaching for the lube he kept in the bedside drawer, he coated his fingers generously before pressing one against Jimin's entrance. Jungkook slowly pushed his finger inside Jimin, watching the smaller man's face intently for any sign of discomfort. Jimin's eyes fluttered shut, and a soft moan escaped his lips as Jungkook's finger slid deeper. That's it, Jimin. Jungkook murmured encouragingly. Relax for me. He began to move his finger gently, scissoring it to stretch Jimin's tight hole. Jimin whimpered and writhed beneath him, his hips lifting to take Jungkook's finger deeper. More, he gasped. I need more. Jungkook added a second finger, twisting and curling them to hit Jimin's prostate. The smaller man cried out, his back arching off the bed as pleasure shot through him. Fu *K Jungkook, Jimin shouted. Right there. Jungkook smirked and continued to stimulate the sensitive spot inside Jimin, adding a third finger when he felt the smaller man was ready. Jungkook's fingers pumped steadily into Jimin, stretching him and preparing him for Jungkook's thick length. Jimin's hips bucked wildly, chasing the pleasure Jungkook's fingers brought him. Jungkook's other hand reached down to wrap around his own aching erection, stroking it in time with his fingers plunging into Jimin. Jungkook, please, Jimin begged, his voice hoarse. I'm ready. I need you inside me now. With a final thrust of his fingers, Jungkook withdrew them and positioned himself at Jimin's entrance. He looked down at Jimin with intense eyes, his chest heaving with each breath. Are you sure? Jungkook asked, his voice low and gravelly with desire. Jungkook's gaze bore into Jimin's, searching for any hint of hesitation or uncertainty. Finding none, he nodded slowly and began to push forward, his thick length breaching Jimin's tight entrance. Jimin gasped at the sudden intrusion, his body tensing for a moment before relaxing and allowing Jungkook to slide deeper. Jungkook groaned at the exquisite heat enveloping him, his eyes rolling back in pleasure. So tight, Jungkook grunted, pausing to give Jimin a moment to adjust. You feel amazing, Jimin. I'm okay, Jimin whispered. Keep going. With a grunt, Jungkook began to move, pulling out slowly before thrusting back in. F***CK. Jimin cried out, his head thrown back in ecstasy. Just like that, Jungkook. Don't stop, Jungkook growled in response, his hips moving faster and harder. The bed creaked beneath them, the sound mixing with their moans and grunts of pleasure. Sweat beaded on their skin as they moved together, lost in the primal rhythm of their lovemaking. Jungkook leaned down to capture Jimin's lips in a fierce kiss, swallowing the smaller man's cries of ecstasy. His hands gripped Jimin's hips tightly, pulling him down to meet each thrust. Jimin wrapped his legs around Jungkook's waist, locking their bodies together. As Jungkook pounded into him, Jungkook's thrusts became more erratic as his climax approached, his movements losing their rhythm. He broke the kiss to bury his face in the crook of Jimin's neck, his hot breath ghosting over the smaller man's skin. Jimin, Jungkook panted, his voice strained. I'm close. So am I, Jimin gasped, his own release building rapidly. Come with me, Jungkook. With a final, powerful thrust, Jungkook drove deep into Jimin and held himself there. His body shuddered as he came, his hot seed filling Jimin's tight channel. The sensation pushed Jimin over the edge, and he cried out Jungkook's name as he found his own release. Jungkook collapsed onto Jimin, their chests heaving as they struggled to catch their breath. Jungkook remained still, his softening length still buried inside Jimin. As they both came down from their highs, he pressed gentle kisses along Jimin's jaw and neck, murmuring words of affection against the smaller man's skin. That was incredible, Jungkook whispered, his voice filled with wonder and satisfaction. You're incredible, Jimin. Jimin smiled softly, his arms wrapping around Jungkook's waist to hold him close. You're not so bad yourself, he teased gently, pressing a kiss to Jungkook's forehead. They lay there in comfortable silence for a few moments, basking in the afterglow of their lovemaking. Eventually, Jungkook carefully withdrew from Jimin and rolled onto his side, pulling the smaller man into his arms. Stay with me tonight, Jungkook asked quietly, his fingers tracing idle patterns on Jimin's back. Jimin nodded without hesitation. Of course, Jungkook smiled softly, his heart swelling with affection for the man in his arms. He tightened his hold on Jimin, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of his head. Thank you, Jungkook murmured, his voice filled with sincerity. For everything. Jimin tilted his head up to look at Jungkook, his eyes shining with emotion. You don't have to thank me, he said softly. Being with you is all I want. Their lips met in a slow, tender kiss, a silent promise of the love and devotion they shared. When they broke apart, Jungkook rested his forehead against Jimin's, their breaths mingling in the small space between them. I love you, Jungkook whispered, the words falling from his lips like a sacred vow. More than anything in this world, I love you too, Jimin replied without hesitation, his voice thick with emotion. Forever and always. Jungkook's heart swelled with love and happiness at Jimin's words. He pressed another soft kiss to the smaller man's lips before settling back against the pillows, pulling Jimin close to his chest. Forever and always, Jungkook echoed, his voice filled with promise. I'll never let you go, Jimina. Jimin snuggled into Jungkook's embrace, resting his head on the taller man's chest. He listened to the steady beat of Jungkook's heart, feeling safe and cherished in his arms as they lay there, wrapped up in each other and the warmth of their shared love. Jungkook began to hum softly. The melody was gentle and soothing, a lullaby that he often sang to Jimin when they were together like this.